we've evolved our AI approach from sort of the let 1,000 flowers bloom to actively transplanting capabilities and driving more systematic change. There's the people that are excited about what AI can bring to the table. There are people that are petrified and may even be anti-AI.
This podcast is brought to you by Invoca, the platform that connects your marketing spend to the revenue it drives. In today's complex buying journeys, tracking results across online and offline touchpoints isn't just a challenge, it's critical to your success. Invoca uses AI to connect your campaigns with 100% of the revenue they generate, so you can confidently invest in what works and optimize what doesn't. Join brands like DirecTV and AutoNation and start turning AI-driven insights into revenue growth. Learn more at invoca.com. So today on CMO Convo, we're delighted to be joined by Gregg Johnson, who is the CEO of Invoca. Gregg, thanks so much for being here today.
Oh, Anthony, it's a real pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's great. Really, I'm sure our audience are really going to benefit from your insights. And I'm sure they'd just love to hear a little bit more about yourself and your kind of journey to your current position, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Yeah, sure. Well, let me start briefly with a little bit of background on Invoca. Invoca is an enterprise software company focused on helping large consumer brands acquire customers and deliver better customer experiences. I've been CEO of the company it'll be 9 years in October. It's in my relationship with Invoca is almost like my relationship with my kids. But my own background, before coming to Invoca, I was in product roles at Salesforce for almost a decade. So my prior child work relationship before that. And in my time there, I spent a lot of time sort of at the intersection of digital marketing and working in Marketing Cloud, also with the contact center and working with Service Cloud. And then before that, I had bounced around between consulting roles and operating roles at startups. So I was at BCG before, also worked in a couple of companies that were, 3 or 4 gals and guys in a garage. So I've spent my entire career at technology, either in consulting roles or operating roles. Obviously, I've been very, very fortunate to be a part of this crazy evolution in the technology world over the past 20 to 25 years, from the internet to then like mobile and social era, obviously now to the AI era. So it's been a very fun and wild ride on the roller coaster of life and career for the past few decades.
I love how you added that, the kind of the parallel between the arrival of the internet as well. I mean, obviously our main focus today is going to be on AI. And I'm just wondering, like, what people keep saying is, well, this is just a new technological change. AI, like anything else. Do you see that parallel, with someone with your kind of perspective there? Is that your kind of view on the whole thing? Or do you kind of think that this is a new frontier that we're on now? Eager to see with your life experience what you think about this.
Yeah, I will guard any sharing of my life experience with some humility around my ability to predict the future. But, I'll quote one of the things that Mark Benioff, the founder and CEO of Salesforce, always says. As he says, we overestimate what we can do in a year and we underestimate what we can do in 10 years. And I think the challenge we all have is, we're on the cusp of all these things that change all the time. And you're trying to get a sense of, is this an incremental change or is this a revolutionary change? And so, for example, I think about two of the internet. I like to say the internet, I would say, really revolution happened just as I was graduating from college. I went to Stanford University. I always like to tell people, my peer, I did not study software engineering at Stanford. I studied economics and politics. And so while there were people who were building the future of the internet at Stanford in the mid-90s, I was laying on a picnic table reading books about philosophy and, Europe in the 15th and 16th centuries. But
all valuable
experiences.
Valuable
experiences. And in the long run, one could argue that understanding philosophy is really important for understanding technology.
Especially in marketing as well. They're big time.
Yeah, exactly. But it's funny because you have these changes that come about and you don't know if they are going to revolutionize everything or not. And you have to make business decisions about how those things will change. And so when you look back on it, the cloud today and the internet today feels inevitable. It was not inevitable in the mid-90s.
Yeah.
I think a very key part of my career in the late aughts, early teens was mobile and social. And you think about, what a pervasive impact social media has on society today. And we did not realize that back in 2007, 2008, 2009. And the idea of not having a mobile device today is just unthinkable, right? Like so much of our world is tied to mobile devices, which was not the case in 2005, 2006, 2007. So I think we're still, in the early innings, but frankly, the pace of change in AI and the capabilities that are evolving so quickly tell me you probably want to bet on this being one of those dramatic changes. Whereas I feel like, take for example, a few years ago, blockchain and some things around crypto, like those things have they've had very deep impact, but I would argue their societal impact has been relatively narrow on sort of a narrow set of people who've aggressively adopted and leveraged those technologies in their businesses. Whereas social, mobile, cloud, AI, I think are going to be much more horizontal, much more widespread, less deep and narrow, more broadly impacting all the things we do in our consumer lives and our work lives as well.
Yeah, I agree. Even to the point where people who aren't aware of it are using it without realizing. Like, that's the thing. My mother said that to me last week. She said, I haven't had anything to do with AI. And I was like, well, they're using this tool, they're using that tool, and then you are interacting with AI.
That's the thing, is these big, broad, horizontal changes, they almost become like a new element of oxygen or carbon in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
You're breathing it, you don't even know it, right?
Yeah.
Like, we don't even think about mobile computing as its own thing anymore. We just think about it as computing.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you imagine your life without your iPhone, your Android device, 99% of the world will be like, no, I can't. I'm sure there's 1%. They'll be like, that would be great. Yeah, I think these changes are going to be so pervasive. And from a design perspective, from somebody who loves building software, you shouldn't need to know it's AI, right? Like the example I always like to use is autocorrect on your iPhone or in Google search, right? Like those are early manifestations of machine learning and technologies like that. But people didn't think of those as AI, as machine learning. They just thought about it as autocorrect.
Yeah.
So I think it is going to be just sort of omnipresent in the world. And if it's designed elegantly, you may not know it's there, but in all likelihood, you're going to be touching it, feeling it, using it, whether you know it or not.
100%, I agree. So we're here today to talk specifically about the kind of fusion of AI in marketing. Invoca recently authored a report on this. And one of the key findings was that the implementation of lack of strategy in AI initiatives was one of the biggest blockers that was encountering. And I was wondering, if you could unpack this a little bit more and maybe add some more insight into what some other blockers have been in terms of adopting AI in marketing strategy and things like that.
Yeah, I think there are a couple things that come to mind. Number one, and I want to start with this one, is really around trust and consumer privacy, because you almost have two streams running in parallel. One is these tremendous advances in AI and technology, and the other one that is very much on the minds of marketers is being more and more mindful of the increasing consumer concern and or appreciation of the need for privacy. And so obviously in the world of marketing, there's been a much stronger focus on first-party data around capturing consent from consumers to use the information that a brand gathers from that consumer to deliver a better experience. And I think we all, as consumers, appreciate the benefit of, when you speak to somebody from a brand, not having to start all over again and re-explain who you are and re-explain all the things you do. Like, we want great experiences, we want great service, but we also don't want our private data all over the internet. And so I think you can't start a conversation around successful AI adoption without having a conversation about the importance of consumer data and privacy. So I think the good news there is, I think marketing teams have gotten far more sophisticated in the past 3 or 4 years around managing privacy, around thinking about privacy, about thinking about the trust and the relationship that they're fostering with the consumer. So the good news is that was happening independent of AI.
Yeah.
Then AI ups the ante, because what people are finding is that, AI and the success of your AI strategy is very tied to the success of your data strategy. And, the more that you've been able to get your data house in order in terms of privacy and also just cleanliness of data and well-structuredness of data, you can use AI to benefit from that. And so I think those two things really go hand in hand as you think about how do you be successful with AI. Number one, do you have a consumer privacy foundation in place, a good solid understanding in your marketing team of how you're treating consumer data, how you think about consumer data? And then from sort of a technological data perspective, do you have a good understanding of your data sets and how you want to go use them? Because that is ultimately a springboard for you to be able to tap into and leverage more AI, is really around the data that you have.
Yeah, and can we talk a little bit about human interaction as well? I think, I think a fear that a lot of people have is around like the kind of loss of a human touch in terms of communicating with customers and things like that. And I imagine, I'm no expert on this, but I imagine that if AI is mishandled, that it can lead to results like that, perhaps AI being a blocker. But I was wondering from your perspective, are there ways that it can enhance the relationship between a customer and a brand, do you think?
I 100% believe so, but I also want to be realistic too, because I think sometimes, especially I have a deep personal interest in governance. I studied international relations in undergrad and grad school. And I think from a public policy perspective, sometimes we're not being clear enough about the impact of AI from a kind of a macro point of view. So I think two things are going to happen. Number one, AI is going to enable more automated digital interactions between consumers and brands. I would say, digital transformation has been a theme that you've probably been podcasting about for years. It's something that brands have been leaning into. They've been building more mobile apps. They're trying to build more self-service capabilities in their websites. And so there was already this tidal wave that brands were managing in terms of transforming how they interact with customers. One of my favorite examples is my father served in Vietnam and was in the armed forces. And so I've been very fortunate to be a member of USAA in the States for a long time, my very first checking account that I ever had. And USAA is just an amazing adopter of technology. And one of my favorite things, this led to a marital spat. So I'll let you in a little drama inside the Johnson household when I first got married.
We love it.
My wife had always had a traditional brick and mortar bank. I had always banked with USAA. And she's like, we have to have a bank that we can go to. I'm like, no, you don't. She's like, how do I deposit my check? And I took out my phone. And I was like, you sign here, you take a picture, and you upload it to the cloud, and they process and they deposit it for me. She's just like, her mind was blown. But USAA did an amazing job of rethinking their customer experience and their value chain. Because like before, somebody at USAA or a system at USA would have to take pictures of those checks. Now they actually had consumers doing it for them. So it was like a win-win for them. It was a better customer experience, and it was a more efficient internal process for them. So you had technology leaders like USAA thinking about how do digital technologies enable us to change how we interact with consumers in an automated way. And now AI is just adding to that. You think about, the capabilities of self-service. Now I can, call into a contact center and I can speak with a virtual agent that can try and assist me in some of my issues. So it is inevitable that there will be more AI-powered automated experiences.
Yeah.
But the great thing I'll add really quickly, and where I think the human interaction point's really important, is AI is enabling us to focus on those human touch points and make them more human. And so I'll give you an example in a contact center world, because a lot of the customers that we serve, really the core to their go-to-market motion and how they acquire and serve customers is a combination of digital marketing, the website, and the contact center. In the old days, I'm going to use a metaphor real quick. In the old days, if you called into a contact center and Jonathan, or Anthony, you were speaking with me, effectively, I would be a contact center agent. I wouldn't be writing things down, but like I'm talking to you and I'm typing at the same time.
Yeah.
And as my kids often like to remind me, if you're doing two things at once and one of those things is someone is talking to you, that means you're not really paying attention.
Yeah.
You're doing all this work manually, and now AI-powered systems can distill the insights from those conversations. They can go get access to resources that help you answer questions. They can do a lot of that menial work. An example I'll give you in my world is whenever I'm interviewing somebody now, I'm no longer taking notes.
Yes.
Because we record our interviews and we have an AI system in Zoom that summarizes those interviews. And so I can 100% focus on the engagement that I'm having with a candidate, in the same way that somebody that is in a contact center now can 100% focus on the interaction they're having with you as a consumer, and how do they provide that unique human touch that's important. It may not be in finding the exact answer in solving a technical question about a product, but a lot of human connection is around trust and is around confidence. And especially a lot of the categories that we serve at Invoca, a lot of the businesses that we know well, things like telecommunications, mortgage and lending, healthcare, these are really weighty topics for people. Like, you think about getting a mortgage is the single biggest financial investment that most people make in their lives, is buying their house. And so helping people have confidence they're making the right decision is important. In healthcare, these are matters of life and death. They're going to impact you, your family, your loved ones. And so the importance of that human connection and the depth of that human connection is really critical. And I think the power of AI is it's going to let us really focus on the value of those unique human to human touch points, while not having humans mess with the relatively low value transactional stuff that a machine can help you do in a more convenient, more self-service sort of way.
I love that. And I totally agree. You know, I was just having this conversation with someone last week, actually, about how much it's helped with meetings, especially with what I'm doing with podcasting, you know, having intro calls, talk about what we're going to talk about, but I can actually, the AI handles all that now. So we're just focused instead on getting to know each other, you know, while I have my note taker, which has a full breakdown of what the subject matter is going to be. Like you say, it enhances the more human element of it. I love that. And it's a really beautiful point. And also, I think it enhances, you know, because you talked about trust as well. The fact that AI doesn't have that human fallibility of, you know, it's not going to get it wrong. It's going to know exactly what you talked about. So then you're going to be more reliable as a person. You're going to come more prepared to whatever the next interaction is. So you can still have that human warmth, but the lack of fallibility there is going to enhance the trust potentially as well, I think, you know.
Yeah, it definitely. I mean, I think, you know, we see this whenever humans are involved, there is an element of subjectivity and fallibility to it. Whereas one of the benefits of technology is it's more arm's length, is agnostic. It's not totally agnostic. Like, let's be very clear about that. The concerns around bias in AI systems are one to be very mindful of and to be thinking about. But there's certainly an element of objectivity that comes in. And I'll tell you that, just imagine, I'm going to go into Hollywood mode for a moment. Imagine a world in 2 or 3 years from now where there's like a hologram of you next to me, and we're not having this conversation this way. Like, we're having a holograms, you know, Hollywood type conversations. Maybe that's where things are going over the next few years.
Yeah, who knows, hey? Who knows? So I wanted to talk a little bit as well about personalization in particular, maybe using sort of personalizing brand experience as well, and cue customer interactions at scale. I was wondering if you had any insights in particular on this, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, I think personalization, I would say, like digital transformation, has been a weighty topic over the past 10 years and something that people have thought about a lot. I mean, I think one of the benefits of AI, I would say there are 2 benefits as you think about personalization. Number one is really around the idea that AI is helping make sense of unstructured sets of data that in the past you could not use for personalization because you couldn't get meaning out of them. So, for example, you know, marketers would think a lot around clicks, website visits, lead form submits, because that data was all put into a structure of nice rows and columns, and you could drive personalization off of those with very linear, deterministic if-then-else statements. And one of the interesting things now is AI has the ability to really understand meaning out of unstructured data. So things like the live conversation that we're having, or a consumer might be having with somebody in your contact center, the reviews that they put on your Google My Business profile out in Google Maps or in Apple Maps, the back and forth it may have over chat on your website. And so now what AI has done is it opened up a whole nother set of data sources for personalization that before you just couldn't tap into. That stuff was just kind of walled off from me. And that's something that we've been working on in Invoca for, a decade plus, and we think is a hugely, hugely valuable data source. The other thing now is, I think AI is just making it easier to make sense of vast quantities of data. And
So
so before, you would have all this data on things like, website visits, web traffic, clicks on ads, all these other sort of things. And frankly, I found a lot of marketers were just getting overwhelmed by the volume of data that they were collecting. And one of the things that I've always personally believed, I spent a lot of time around data when I was a product executive before I came to Invoca. And one of the things I really preached with our product teams is they would want to collect data on every single click that people were doing. And I talked about this goal of you need to earn the right to use more data. You should go collect a little bit of data, iterate on it, and use it to inform your business decisions. And then that gives you the right to go collect more data and then more data. Whereas what I found people would do is they would collect this much data without actioning on any of it, and then they get completely overwhelmed. And so I think what AI gives you the ability to do is it gives you the ability to change the data to action ratio much faster. And it becomes easier for you to not have to figure out as a marketer, how do I synthesize all this various different expanding data set into relevant insights and actions that I can go automate and activate against. Like, the machines are better at doing that. You can sort of take a data set and use an LLM to say, look at this data set and tell me what is significant and what is not significant in this data set. Whereas in the old days, you had to be far more hypothesis driven. You had to say, I think this is the answer. Is that true or false? Now you can let the machine go do that work for you. And so I think both the benefit of AI and personalization is really twofold. It's number one, it's giving you access to draw insight and meaning from data sets you never had access to before. They were very important to consumers. Like, people, for those individuals that go put information into Google reviews, they put time and effort into that, right? Like, that's not required for their check-in at the hotel. That is an action they have decided to go do. The conversations they have with the contact center, those are meaningful conversations. So number one, new data sets are available that were previously locked away. And then number two, I think AI is making it easier to separate sort of the wheat from the chaff in those data sets. And when you separate the weed out, that's what you can go personalize on. And so you can really focus your personalization efforts on what's meaningful, what's going to turn the dial, versus having to be much more hypothesis driven and inspecting the data at a very granular level of detail, which probably took more time in the old days.
yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, thanks for that. I think let's talk a little bit then about digital efficiency and human connection, that striking the balance between those two things in particular. We've talked about this already. We've already talked about how it can personalize a little bit more, but if you were going to lay it out, I guess, in kind of practical terms, what would you say is what should marketers and marketing leaders be thinking about in terms of enacting a strategy that is very focused on efficiency, but also in connection and enhancing it?
I'll talk about that in sort of two regards. One is the relationship between your brand and your consumer and that mix of digital and human touch. The other is just as a marketing organization. I'll probably spend more time on the latter just because we've talked about the former a little bit more. But I mean, I definitely think going back and doing some journey mapping and re-looking at what is a consumer's needs at various points of their customer journey and what new capabilities does AI bring to the table and what can you drive more self-service around is one thing, versus where are the pivotal moments in that customer journey, where are the opportunities for building trust, where's the opportunity for building confidence. Like, a lot of the marketers that we're working with, they're trying to get a consumer over the hump and making a very important buying decision. Like, I know for myself, when I got my first mortgage, when my wife and I, we were recently married, had just had our first child in San Francisco, I was an ex-BCG management consultant who I knew my way around an Excel spreadsheet. So like, all the quantitative elements of getting a mortgage, I could figure out on my own. AI could have helped me do that back in the day. That would have been fine. But what I was nervous about was like, is my loan going to close on time? Am I going to lose the house of my dreams that my wife is super excited about? And am I getting the right type of mortgage? Because I've never lived through an era of rising mortgage interest rates. That's where I needed confidence. I needed somebody to shepherd me over the buying threshold to help me make that decision. So I think journey mapping is really important there. Taking your question another direction around internal capabilities within marketing, I obviously think every marketing technology platform, every digital advertising platform are all pulling the power of AI into what they do. So So, for example, we do a lot of work with consumers and marketing teams that spend a lot of money on Google. And Google is investing very, very heavily in everything they're doing around technologies like Performance Max to help make the process of bidding and running campaigns as efficient as possible, and removing the need for humans to be way down in the weeds of all these individual knobs and levers, and getting more to a systemic view where you can go in and you can say to Performance Max, these are the goals I'm trying to achieve. These are the types of returns I'm looking to drive. Here's my budget. And then having the system drive more of the decisioning around where should you be spending money, where are the right arbitrage opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. Now, you need to go back and look at the data and validate those things. Like, you don't just let the system run wild. But I think across all the marketing technology, advertising technology stack, like, there are more AI capabilities to be delivered upon. But I think and another personal note, my oldest son is going to college next year, and he's going to USC, and he's going to the School of Creative Arts and Sciences. And so, like, the Hollywood school. And I was down at initiation and orientation for that school a few weeks ago, and they talked about all the changes around technology and the creative art, and I think about marketing creative, and how they're really trying to train this next generation of creative people to embrace technology, to use technology to extend the realm of their creativity. And I think that's the exciting thing for marketing teams as well, is, the amount of work that it goes to test a new creative idea has been reduced, which, if you're dead set, in the old days, I think about kind of Mad Men era of advertising agencies, you have them pitch 3 ideas because it took a lot of work to conceive and prototype and proof of concept a creative idea. And so you'd do that agency, like your creative brief, and you'd say, come back in a month and pitch me 3 ideas. Well, now the cost of iterating on an idea has gone from this to this. And so your ability to push new boundaries from a creativity point of view and really leverage sort of the power of brainstorming and exploring new creative edges, the cost of doing that has come down tremendously. And so I think on that, as you think about as a marketing team, your ability to push the boundaries of creativity, I tend to think of marketing as this beautiful combination of right brain and left brain, of quantitative and qualitative, scientific and creative. And so on the scientific side, I think the benefits of AI are very clear. You're just able to drive and automate more of these actions that previously took people spending time on keyboards. But on the creative side, I think there's an opportunity for it to really open up creative avenues. Now, I think the challenge everybody's going to have is, from an ad agency point of view, whereas it used to take, 3 teams of human beings a month to go do that work, now, like, it's just not that. There's not that much human labor involved in coming up with those 3 concepts. Like, you can prototype things much faster. The way we build software is changing. It's much easier to prototype things. So I think we do need to be mindful as a society of, like, what is going to mean. But essentially, I think people are going to be super powered. They're going to, what one person could do in a month, they're now going to be able to do in a couple days. And I think that's exciting from a creative point of view. I think we have to be mindful of what that means from an employment point of view, from a societal impact point of view.
Yeah, I love the idea that, it can give us more freedom, can't it, to think up more strategies, I think, if we're able to validate or invalidate certain things quicker. I think it gives us more space to be creative. That's what I love about it as well, by increasing the speed of it.
It does. And I also think, I think we both underestimate and overestimate how these technologies can help us. Let me give you an example. We have been looking at an acquisition. Obviously, I'm not going to go into detail on what that is, but, as I was thinking about this and I was thinking about how we would communicate it to the market, I went out and used an AI platform just to give me some ideas around how the combination of these 2 companies might be interesting. Now, obviously, an AI platform only knows the publicly available data, like what's on the company's website, what's on our website, what are the products and services they offer, what do we offer? So in my head, I was like, well, it doesn't really know the insider information that, the 2 companies have talked about. But it was interesting, actually. The publicly available information was pretty good.
Yeah.
And it kind of play mini CEO and imagining how the combination of our two technology assets might be complementary and beneficial in a 1 + 1 = 3 type of way. Obviously, it didn't have access to a lot of the private data and the private conversations that we were having, but I think sort of forcing yourself to change and evolve. I mean, we're all somewhat victims of our own inertia. We're creatures of habit. We like to do things. I have my coffee in the morning, as part of my wake up routine. And I think you do have to do some sort of vigorous reshaking of things to prompt yourself. I'm trying to do this to myself, but also with the teams that I work with, to prompt them to think about the old value chain of how we built a marketing campaign. Should we still be doing it that way? What does new technology enable? How should we rethink going about that? Whether it's how we build product, how we build campaigns, how we serve customers. I do think there is a strong human element to inertia, to routine. And given how fast things are changing, I think proactively sort of shaking that bottle is an important thing to do.
Yeah, you mentioned inertia as well. I worry sometimes. I think that one of the side effects of AI, I suppose, with over-reliance could be not inertia exactly, but it will become too dependent. Do we become a bit creatively stagnant? Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, that is always a concern, isn't it? And I've seen myself almost as well relying too much on LLMs for certain things sometimes. And I do think maybe that could be with research as well. I sometimes wonder, and there was a big part of marketing. I think somebody pointed out to me the other day, when we used to do research ourselves, you would spend time getting close to the subject matter. Now, AI might be able to still cover the same subject matter with a tremendous speed and more detail, but it's not. When you study something yourself and you get close to the subject matter over time, you can kind of speak about it with more authority. It's hard to describe exactly, but I wonder sometimes if that human closeness to the subject can't really be replaced by AI research sometimes. It's kind of, I wonder if
I completely agree. And I think there's an issue here around discipline, frankly.
Yeah.
I didn't realize I was going to turn this into a parenting podcast. But I was listening to a really interesting podcast. Ezra Klein of the New York Times is somebody that I listen to and just find interested in. And I was listening to a podcast of his the other day, and he was talking about how in the early 70s, they did research around, I want to say it was middle school children. What percentage of middle school children read books during the summertime? And it was like 45%. And that number has now dropped to like 10 or 11%.
Yeah.
And sort of, you can insert whatever you want to say about AI, social media, whatever.
They're all like this.
Exactly. Anyway, the parenting class will fully happen later today. But the thing that I think about this is discipline, and how there's a difference between if you have access to new and wider sets of resources as a marketer, I feel like you have two choices. Number one, you can become lazy, or number two, you can become more disciplined and say, this is a way for me to get more information faster, but it doesn't fully supplant the other information sets that I have available to. It's like the conversation I have with my teenagers around the importance of understanding mathematics and sciences at the first principle level, rather than just taking the answers that ChatGPT gives you, is because it's sort of, I'm mixing my metaphors here. I apologize on the fly, but learning those things at the root fundamental level is like going to the gym and building mental muscle. And that mental muscle comes in valuable later in your life by teaching you to dissect problems, to think logically and rationally, to work through things. And no matter how much AI you apply, if you're disciplined, you should never want to lose that ability to systematically think through and work through a problem. Like, that is going to be, critical thinking skills are going to be valuable in life, regardless of what you do.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it's around discipline, and can you use these technologies to supplement and enrich your data sources, to enrich what you already do today, but then also figure out where are the elements that you can continue to lean into that complement that without just relying on, AI or LLMs to do all that root cause for you, and making sure that you don't lose those critical thinking skills that, really I think are invaluable and will continue to be invaluable in everyone's career.
Yeah, I think this really takes us to the heart of our discussion in a way, the kind of fusion of AI and technology. It's an uneasy kind of marriage in a way, because I feel like there's a very humanistic quality to marketing, isn't it? Very much so. And it's a reason why people from the liberal arts very often end up in marketing. And now that they're expected to be more tech savvy than ever, in a way, and deal with more data sets than ever. And I expect there are a lot of marketing people going into it who are pulling their hair out thinking, I didn't train for this, But I wonder, that there's a reason for it. And I think it's partly because you bring a lot of yourself into marketing, don't you? Into marketing strategy, the lived experience of the marketer, their own wisdom, what they've learned over time, informs the creativity, allows them to come up with ideas and interact with research and interpret it in ways that people might not have before. So I think, I agree with you. I think that, obviously the route to all of this or the solution is finding a way that for AI to augment human creativity is always the answer, isn't it? I think.
And I'll add, we had language to describe a generation of people that we call them digital natives, about people who, never lived in a world where the internet did not exist.
Yeah.
We're going to have a generation of AI natives. Yeah. And I think the good news is you can already see, if you skew young enough, which again is probably more in my parental role than in my CEO role, you see, the teenagers and younger, they're going to be AI native and they are going to adapt. How exactly that world will look for them, I wish I would say I was that prescient. I don't pretend to be, but they will adapt. I think the challenge, speaking frankly, and I would encourage marketers to think about this, is for people who did not grow up in the AI native era, for people who grew up in the digital era, the pre-digital era. You cannot let yourself be a victim of inertia. You need to go proactively think about how you can apply and learn these tools to change your job. Because I think a lot about, the changes we've seen in society around manufacturing, in the 80s and the 90s. And, I think we as a society didn't do the right things, and we didn't do people justice whose lives were and professions were impacted by those rapid technology changes. I believe those rapid technology changes benefited society overall, but there was a set of people that they had negative impacts on. And I think AI will benefit society overall, but there will be a series of people who have negative impact, and we need to be mindful of those people and the impact it's going to have on their lives. And we need to be encouraging people to shake themselves loose a little bit and think about and experiment and try to see how these technologies can change and evolve what they do. Because ignorance and putting your head in the sand as a marketer for your own career perspective, much less for the benefit of the company that you work for, that is not an advantageous approach right now. And so I think really keeping your head up rather than putting your head down, being open to experimentation and learning, acknowledging that, we all may not get it right around. Like, I haven't gotten it right around. I'm learning new things every day from my peers around how they're using these technologies. But this is not a time to put your head in the sand, not only for the benefit of your company, more importantly, for the benefit of yourself and your career trajectory and what you're doing.
Yeah, all the doom and gloom talk about the AI overlords doesn't help, I suppose, taking over.
Back to my earlier point, like this is not me speaking as a CEO. This is me more speaking as somebody who's interested in public policy. We need to be having an open and more frank conversation. Yeah. I find like the doom and gloom goes both ways. It's like, it's not going to have any impact. And I kind of go, nah, that's not true. And then I see the other way, like I'll speak on the negative side of Mark Benioff for a second. I saw something on LinkedIn like a month or two ago where Mark came out and was like, at Salesforce, we're not hiring any more new developers because the AI can do all the work. And I just clicked over to the careers website and like, there's 120 engineering roles open. So that doesn't seem true either. So I feel like going in one of the two extremes. And again, from a policy point of view, I think we should be having a more grounded conversation around like the reality. And certainly from a practitioner point of view, as a marketer and as a marketing executive, CMOs need to be thinking about like, what's the realistic implications for my team, for my brand, for how we operate.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I wanted to touch a little bit as well, Greg, on tech stacks. Your AI marketing tech stacks, particularly with the move, everyone's excited now. I mean, generative AI has certainly had its day. It's still very much a talking point, but agentic AI is one that people are very, very excited about in particular. Yeah. And I was wondering, what are your thoughts on this, and how do you think it's going to impact marketing in particular? Or are you already seeing it impact it? I'm interested in what your experience with agentic AI has been.
So I'll provide a couple thoughts here. Number one is, I think the good news from a marketing point of view is you're going to have lots of options. So if you look at, every major technology provider, ourselves included, is looking at how can you apply agentic AI to your solution to make your customer's life better. So if you have good technology partners as a CMO, you should have lots of optionality in how do you go apply AI to get more productivity and efficiency out of the teams that you have. I think there's a second option that obviously is coming is, if I think about Claude and OpenAI and these other Perplexity, these other platforms, like these are platforms you could also go build some things yourselves on and do work in that space. I think one of the challenges I would say to CMOs there is, I don't know whether this is the CMO, the marketing technology leader, the technology leader in an IT role, but I find that companies often have more confidence and more belief in their ability to use technology and build technology than they actually have the ability to go deliver on. And so I'm going to go back to my data analogy. My belief on data and analytics is prove the right to do more complicated things. I kind of think the same thing on AI, like rather than going off and trying to build a bunch of things yourselves, like prove your organizational ability to drive change around AI by frankly using the AI capabilities that your vendors are going to provide for you, oftentimes as part of your existing contracts, or sometimes they may have AI capabilities that are add-ons. But the lowest hanging fruit is to go lean into the technologies that you have and push the limits and make sure you break those limits, find the outer boundary before you go start building something. I'll give you an example from our own company. We had a software engineer who we were heavy users of Slack, and they were looking to get some summaries of alerting and looking to build something that would essentially notify them. They get notifications in Slack when like a certain service type of thing happens that they need to go look into. And their initial inclination was to go build something. I was like, have you seen the AI summaries that Slack provides in of itself? Like, make sure you go look at those capabilities, push those capabilities, prove they're insufficient. Rather than thinking they look like they're not sufficient to me, prove they're insufficient before you go buy or build something new. And so I think as a CMOs, given how, especially because the marketing technology stack is 99.9% natively cloud-based, like it's not the on-prem world like you might have in your back office or in your contact center, where those technologies, it's harder for those technologies to evolve quickly. The MarTech stack is like 99.9% to 100% cloud. So you should expect your cloud vendors to be enabling more agentic AI capabilities in the platforms you already have. You should aggressively go lean into those, see what they can go do. And then if you run into some walls, then you think about, okay, do I need a new vendor? Do I do some of the stuff in-house? But I would really encourage people to lean hard into the capabilities they already have with the platforms they already have before you go net new vendors or build things on your own, because just make sure your estimate of how good you are at adopting and building technology, validate you're that good before you assume you're that good is kind of my.
So let's talk about some actionable takeaways for CMOs then. I want to talk in particular how we can talk about an interesting one, an interesting conundrum we always have on CMO Convo is the relationship between sales and marketing in particular. People think more and more, I think of marketing as being a kind of a growth center rather than a cost center. This has been in the public conversation. So I was wondering about your takeaways with regards to AI and this in particular, how I guess marketing, can be more of a revenue driver or prove its worth in this regard and be more aligned with sales in that way. What are your thoughts on this?
Let me be controversial when we're talking about AI.
Yeah.
AI has nothing to do with this.
Okay.
I'm being a little bit facetious. So here's the number one thing you need to focus on as a CMO is how do you get very clear alignment, both strategically and from a measurement framework with how your team drives revenue for the company.
Yeah.
Like, no AI is going to solve that problem for you. That is a organizational alignment and communication problem. And so the way that I think of it is at most of our customers, there's basically three teams that are really important in driving revenue. There's the marketing team. There is the commerce or digital team, which sometimes falls under marketing. They own the website, they own e-commerce. And there's a contact center sales team that, provides live sales assistant, whether it's chat or whether it's via voice, and ultimately helps gives consumers the confidence to go buy. You need to get lockstep alignment amongst those three teams on what you're trying to achieve and what the success metrics are. Because without that, no amount of technology, no amount of data, no amount of AI is going to solve your problems. And so this is an area where we frankly have spent a lot of time. I jokingly say when I'm out with enterprise customers, if you think about those three teams, a marketing lead, an e-commerce lead, and a contact center lead, their common boss is usually the CEO. And that's not a great thing. That means that like organizationally, it's hard for them to work together. They often speak different languages. Like the contact center, I like to say is, people that are pretty conservative, that are very operationally oriented. Marketing people are like fun. They've got purple hair. They've got tattoos. Happy hour. So the DNA of those two groups are not the same DNA. So it's not easy to work together. But I would say step number one is make sure you have alignment of goals and KPIs. What are the results you're trying to achieve? And then as a CMO, once you've got clarity on goals, then you just ruthlessly measure your marketing team and your marketing investments on their ability to drive those goals and those outcomes. And the way that I think about this, I'm going to use like a hand gesture really quickly. Marketers think about funnels. And I would say as a marketer, you want to be measuring as far down the funnel as you possibly can. And the bottom of the funnel is one of two things. It's either a sale and revenue, or it's customer lifetime value. Those are the things your CEO, your CFO, and your board cares about. Those should be the things that your e-commerce and your contact center teams should be caring about. And so if you can align objectives on what the bottom of that funnel metric is, then when you're bidding, when you're running campaigns, when you're doing measurement, you just measure to the greatest degree that you can the investments that you're making to help you drive that bottom of funnel outcome. And the thing that's interesting is even the top of funnel investments these days, when you think about TV, video, and streaming, that is a world that traditionally was around creativity, was around brand awareness, was very soft from a measurement point of view. Technology is evolving, and your ability to measure the impact that those top of funnel investments have on bottom of funnel outcomes, that ability is growing day by day by day by day. Now, there's still an argument for making top of funnel investments for brand awareness and other reasons, but that doesn't mean you should be intellectually lazy about seeing what impact they have on the bottom of the funnel. Like back to my earlier point, AI and other technology advances can either make you lazy or they can make you more powerful if you have good discipline. And I would argue this is an area where if you have a good discipline, they can make you more powerful. But I think the number one thing is get alignment on the value and the KPIs that drive value for the business, which is kind of the bottom of your funnel, and then drive your measurement strategy on everything you're doing as far down the funnel as you can, because then what you're doing is you're going to your CFO and your CEO, and if you're asking for more budget, more things to invest, you're saying, this is the bottom line impact I'm having on the business. And that's a very different conversation. Trust me, as a CEO, it's a very different conversation than you're asking for money, and I don't really understand how that's going to be the business, to a conversation where you're saying, I have data and I have conviction that if you give me $1 more in budget, I can drive $3 more in revenue. Then everybody's going to be clapping their hands, be like, go, 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 go.
Yeah, I love that. How data, the more the sophistication of data has empowered marketers in that regard, I think. Yeah, I think that's a really, really great point. Yeah.
And that's the place you want to be as a CMO. Like you aspire as a CMO. CMOs, again, this combination of quant and qual, creative and scientific, like there's just this amazing purview that you have as a CMO across the business to be this really powerful growth driver. If you've got the purview, like you've got the perspective, you've got the view on the customer, you just need the data, the analytics, the KPIs, and AI can help you do that. But unless you have a clear view on what those shared KPIs and goals are, AI is not going to solve that problem for you.
No, it's great. Yeah, it always needs human capability behind it all the time, and human ingenuity. I think that's a great lesson to take from that. What do marketers need to know, do you think, that perhaps they're not talking about enough in the kind of, I guess, in the social media space, the LinkedIn space? What is the thing that you wish that was being talked about more that you don't see often enough among the kind of LinkedIn talk points?
I think, again, speaking a little bit from experience inside our own company, we've evolved our AI approach from sort of the let 1,000 flowers bloom to actively transplanting capabilities and driving more systematic change. And I think sort of recognition, this is more of an organizational management type of principle, is like understanding that there are people on your teams. There's a variety of people. There's the people that are excited about what AI can bring to the table. There are people that are petrified and may even be anti-AI. There's a whole group of folks in the middle who aren't either of those two things. They're not agile enough to be super excited, but they're not worried enough to be petrified. They kind of just may not know what to do. And I think recognizing that even in a company or a culture that values bottom-up input and participatory kind of work, you may need to prod and drive more change, because this is a bigger change than what most of us had managed in our lifetimes. And so I think prodding people in a more structural, proactive way to drive that change in your company and for their own benefit. It's not only for your company's benefit, it's for the benefit of all those employees and their career track and their career development. I think talk about sort of the organizational management, sort of organizational psychology elements of that. That's a really important thing to get the technology stuff right.
Yeah, I love it, Greg. Oh, it's been great talking to you today, Greg. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sure our audiences are going to love this. If people want to reach out to you, find out more about this subject, where should they go?
Just find us at invoca.com, which is invoca.com, or you can just email me at ceo@invoca.com. I look forward to the next time when we can do the Hollywood hologram version of the conversation.
But I definitely like to do a part 2. Yeah, it's definitely been a lot of fun.
I enjoy the yin and the yang of being way down in the details of the business today, but also stepping back and thinking about like where are things going. So it was a fun conversation, Anthony, and I appreciate the time.
Yeah, you too, Greg. Thanks so much.